Welcome back, everyone. This is the Oracle Decodes the Devil, Satan, and Lucifer. Are they all the same? This is the Devil card from the Tarot deck. It's the number 15 card, and it shows a figure with a few symbols on the card that I think most people would see and say they are satanic or related to Satan. Some might also say that they're symbols relating to Lucifer, using the devil, Satan, and Lucifer interchangeably. Here's another image of what some would call the devil or Satan, shown here with a pitchfork and tail, in a more modern look where he's wearing a necktie. But whether you call him the devil, Satan, or Lucifer, are they all one and the same being? In this decoding, let's answer that question. We're going to start out at Wikipedia and take a look at what they have to say, starting out about Lucifer. We can learn here there's only one mention of Lucifer in the Bible. Lucifer is the name of various mythological and religious figures, Wikipedia tells us, due to the unique movements and discontinuous appearances of the planet Venus in the sky. This mythology surrounding these figures often involved a fall from the heavens to earth or the underworld. Interpretations of a similar term in the Hebrew Bible, translated in the King James Version as the proper name capitalized Lucifer, led to a Christian tradition of applying the name Lucifer and its associated stories of a fall from heaven to Satan, but modern scholarship translated the term in the relevant Bible passage, Isaiah chapter 14, verse 12, as, quote, morning star or shining one, rather than as a proper name, Lucifer. As a name for the devil, the more common meaning in English with the capitalization of the word Lucifer is the rendering of the Hebrew word that's a transliteration, pronounced Halel, from Isaiah chapter 14, verse 12, given in the King James Version of the Bible. The translators of this version took the word from the Latin Vulgate, which translated the Hebrew to the Latin word Lucifer without capitalization, meaning, quote, the morning star, the planet Venus, or as an adjective, light-bringing. As a name for the planet Venus, in its morning aspect, Lucifer, or the light-bringer, is a proper name and capitalized in English. In Greco-Roman civilization, it was often personified and considered a god, in some versions considered a son of Aurora, or the dawn. A similar name used by the Roman poet Catullus for the planet in its evening aspect is Noctifer, or the night-bringer. Now we're going to take a look at the only mention in the Old Testament Bible about Lucifer, starting in Isaiah chapter 14, verse 12, where it says, quote, how art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations? For thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation, in the sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. Yet thou shalt be brought down to hell, to the sides of the pit. So let's cue up a screenshot once again from Stellarium and take a look at Lucifer from the Sky Story perspective. The information we've already learned from various scholars reported by Wikipedia is that Lucifer is a direct correspondence then with the planet Venus, which is completely correct, as you will see for yourself, specifically talking about the morning aspect of the planet Venus. Now, even though these scholars directly tell you about this, they don't really show you why. In the story about Lucifer, that it's talking about the planet Venus, at least this one specific aspect of Venus's travels anyway. This aspect that we're looking at, this morning part of Venus's travels, is a story given in the Bible in the book of Isaiah. It's about Venus's morning dance in the sky. This is why Lucifer is the morning star or the light bringer. As you can see here in this screenshot from the perspective of someone in the northern hemisphere, looking up at what we discovered and have been calling the real oracle or the real all-seeing eye, here in the sky, you can see in this story, the sun is just about to rise, and you already find Lucifer or Venus in the morning here, said to be the son of aurora or dawn, called the morning star or light bringer, because the planet Venus, as you can see, is higher up the arc of the ecliptic already, or is ahead or higher than the sun when looking at this sky story for what we commonly call the beginning of September of 2020. That's where you could say Lucifer, like in the book of Isaiah, is exalting himself like the Most High here. But remember, Wikipedia already told us that, quote, due to the unique movements and discontinuous appearances of Venus in the sky, that the mythology around these figures like Lucifer often involved a fall from the heavens to the earth or the underworld. This is because, as you can see here in this next screenshot, looking at the northern hemisphere perspective of the sky story and what we commonly call the beginning of July of 2021, you can see where this is an image of sunrise. At the same time, when we just looked in what we commonly call September of 2020, where Venus or Lucifer was higher than the sun there, or where he was bringing the light, exalted in the heavens. But here a year later, the sunrise of what we commonly call July of 2021, you can see that this time Venus is just above the eastern horizon of the earth and found no longer exalted, but below the sun. Or in other words, Lucifer has been thrown down to earth. And as we go forward 2 more months to what we commonly call the beginning of September of 2021 at dawn, Lucifer has now been thrown into hell or the underworld, as you can see. Hell in these stories corresponds to, as you can see by the sky story picture, the area of the all-seeing eye or the real oracle that is still there in reality, but not visible above the Earth's horizon from the sky story viewer's perspective, as we've seen before in previous decodings. We're going forward another month to what we commonly call the beginning of October of 2021, and you can see Lucifer, or the planet Venus, is still in hell, while the sun is rising above the horizon of the Earth in the east. Another month ahead to what we commonly call the beginning of November of 2021, we see Venus, or Lucifer, remains in the underworld realm as the sun is rising in the east. 2 more months later to what we commonly call January 1st of 2022, we see Venus or Lucifer is found closer to the horizon of the earth at sunrise, but still hellbound. Things significantly change a month later, where here you can see in what we commonly call the beginning of February of 2022 at dawn, Venus or Lucifer is once again found exalted, even higher than the arc of the ecliptic, being the light bringer or the morning star once more. And this pattern then continues as we'll see here in these next series of screenshots. In the beginning of what we commonly call March of 2022, the pattern is holding into April, as you can see here, and continues into the beginning of May at the time of sunrise, where Venus or Lucifer is still exalted or higher than the sun. This continues still into the beginning of what we commonly call June of 2022 and throughout July. And although the gap between the sun and Venus is narrowing at this time, Venus is still found to be higher than the sun at the time of sunrise here. But notice here in the sky story in the beginning of what we commonly call July of 2022 that the planet Venus or Lucifer is found to still be higher than the sun here. But where we started tracking Venus's travels the July before, we found Lucifer not exalted above the sun still, but being thrown down to earth and then hell. And this is what Wikipedia called the unique movements and discontinuous appearances of the planet Venus. And this is the cause of what we see here is we're comparing these two screenshots of the beginning of July from one year to the next and finding Venus in two different locations. What is this? Well, that gets into the devil and Satan. Now that we've seen this one aspect, Lucifer, of how Venus behaves. This unique movements and discontinuous appearances of the planet Venus is what we're getting into next. So when you're researching on your own, the explanations put forward about this from mainstream sources, you'll see that in each and every one, they all involve putting forward also the given heliocentric model of the universe in the explanations about how the planet Venus, along with the Earth and all the other planets in the solar system as well, right, are shooting through outer space, spinning on their axes and revolving or orbiting around the sun. In this information that we're presenting piece by piece in our decodings here, this completely destroys the false model of our cosmos that we've all been given, just like you're going to see for yourself again in this piece. So I know it's been a while since we've decoded another tarot card from the major arcana, but remember we left off in our last tarot decoding with the High Priestess card, where we learned that she is encoding her position specifically on the summer solstice at high noon. And we're learning along with these decodings that the major arcana of the tarot is encoding also for the sky clock story. And it begins specifically at a certain time, the summer solstice at high noon, which is a screenshot we've queued up here where we see the High Priestess or the constellation of Taurus in conjunction this year with one of the three phasing celestial bodies that pass through her during this time of year, the moon, Mercury, and here, this year, what we commonly call 2020, right in the bullseye of Taurus, you find the planet Venus. So we're going to see that even though the High Priestess card is the number 2 card, and we're seemingly jumping out of order to the Devil card, the number 15 card, they are connected closely, as you're about to see for yourself. So looking at the High Priestess card colors and imagery, you can see it corresponds overall to the daytime. Quite the contrast to the dark imagery and black background in the images on the Devil card. And this makes sense symbolically when you're looking at it, right? To the devil's location in the dark realms of the underworld or hell. And that's where we're going next, as you'll see for yourself, and it's nothing to fear. So we're still looking at what is happening in the sky story on the summer solstice in the northern hemisphere, but instead of noon, we're looking at the opposite time of the day at midnight and what's going on in the underworld or below the horizon of the earth look into the abyss, or in other words, what's going on down in hell, where you can see it's our old friend Orion again. And from our perspective, at this time, you'll find Orion inverted or upside down, right at that special cross of the north-south meridian line and the arc of the ecliptic. But before we get into this further and start decoding this Devil card completely, because what is happening here is that it's going to get confusing if we continue to try to look at this from the upside down perspective. So what we're going to do is flip the image right side up just to make what we're going to look at next as we fully decode the Devil card from the tarot easier to follow as we go along for the next few minutes. So you can see the Devil himself is pictured as what is also known as Baphomet, this chimera creature of man and goat, as Satan is often depicted. But let's start with what is familiar to us by now, this positioning of the Devil's arm on the tarot card, with one arm pointing up and one down, encoding within this, again, as we've seen before, the constellation of Orion, as you can see in this screenshot of midnight summer solstice in the northern hemisphere, Orion, found to be at that special cross of the north-south meridian line in the arc of the ecliptic, is holding the torch of the sun in his hand, looking also very much like the lake of fire down there in hell. You've heard that the realm of hell is famous for having, where the devil is also thrown into at the end of his story. Orion, as we've seen in many decodings, is always crowned by Auriga, and the devil's crown, you can see, are horns, long and curved, like the horns not just of any regular goat, but a mountain goat. And that is encoding at least one part of it for his location at the arc of the north-south meridian line and the arc of the ecliptic. And you can see what look like bat wings on the devil's back on the tarot card. And the horns on his head and the wings both are encoding also for the constellation of Taurus, because of it also being connected always to the crown of Auriga too, and because of the way you can see Taurus is shaped. It could very easily look like, to the storytellers here, like wings and horns both. You can also find this year, on the summer solstice of what we commonly call 2020, the planet Venus is also found in the constellation of Taurus. The two people, the man and woman, found chained up to the devil are encoding for the constellation of Gemini, or the twins, found also to be near that special crossing point of the north-south meridian line and the arc of the ecliptic on the summer solstice at midnight in the northern hemisphere with Orion. But in the underworld, or hidden or hellish realm, along with Orion and Taurus, you're also going to see that these images that show up on the devil card, where it's more to it than what we're just looking at here in these positions of these constellations. We're going to see how this unfolds in just a few minutes. So before we go on, I just wanted to point out that in much of the imagery we see relating to the devil or Satan, it also involves him holding a pitchfork, which you can see, because of the way that it's shaped, also corresponds to the constellation of Gemini in the sky story. And then the devil's or Satan's tail, I think, corresponds to the constellation we nowadays call Monoceros, or the unicorn. As you can see, because of its location that could be described as coming out of Orion's backside, I think the unicorn corresponds to the devil's arrow-headed shaped tail. And for the last element on the devil card of the tarot deck, what's left to decode is what I think by now is famous to everybody's eyes, right? The inverted pentagram, right in between the devil's horns, as you can see there. You're about to find out, for what might be the first time that anyone has correctly done this, why the inverted pentagram is tied to the devil or Satan, and why he's often interchangeably called Lucifer. That inverted pentagram is encoding specifically to what Wikipedia called unique movements and discontinuous appearances of the planet Venus. The devil card of the tarot deck is telling us how and when to get a handle on the devilishly tricky transit of the planet Venus. And it points right to midnight in the northern hemisphere on the summer solstice. So on midnight on the summer solstice in the northern hemisphere, in what we commonly call 2020, we find Venus right in the bullseye area of the constellation of Taurus. But when we look again at the northern hemisphere summer solstice at midnight underworld realm, the following year, in what we commonly call 2021, Venus is now found to be in the constellation of Gemini, or the twins, the same man and woman chained to the devil card of the tarot. So here, in what we commonly call 2022, we find Venus on the summer solstice in the northern hemisphere at midnight in the underworld, back in the constellation again of Taurus, but just slightly more westward than the bullseye location where we started tracking Venus year over year at midnight on the summer solstice in the northern hemisphere, where Venus is in the hellish realm, and we will keep going year after year now and watch this pattern unfold. In what we commonly call 2023, we find Venus now just east of the constellation of what we nowadays call Cancer the Crab. And just something else that we're going to throw in here that we're going to take a look at. Remember, in our previous decodings of ancient Egypt, we saw that the ancient Egyptians saw not a crab in this constellation, but to them it looked like a scarab beetle, something that we're going to connect back to in just a minute. Going forward now to what we commonly call 2024, we find Venus in alignment with the Sun, right in Orion's outstretched hand, corresponding to the torch that the devil is holding in his hand. This torch corresponding, yes, to the Sun, but also that it's one of the stations found in Venus's transit on the northern hemisphere summer solstice at midnight sky story. And as you're seeing, all these symbols of the devil card are encoding for this transit of the devilishly tricky planet Venus. In what we commonly call the summer solstice of 2025, Venus is found right above the head of the constellation we call today Cetus the Whale. And as we go forward into what we commonly call 2026, Venus is found to be back in the constellation of Cancer, but this time, instead of being slightly east of it, Venus is right in the middle of the constellation of Cancer. The constellation the ancient Egyptians thought looked like a scarab beetle. And this is where you can see the very famous band, the Beatles, took their name from. And this is really what their song, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, was really encoding. And we all thought it was about the psychedelic drug LSD. Lucy is short for Lucifer, the planet Venus, and is one of the stations of Venus, the constellation of Cancer, or the beetle to ancient Egyptians. Lucy, or Venus, is in the sky with the diamonds of the stars, and one constellation that she visits on her transit more than once on the summer solstice in the hellish realm is Cancer, or the beetle, as you can see. The Beatles were definitely talking about the real, almost psychedelic trip it really is to be able to decode all this ancient knowledge. And we didn't need any LSD to do it, and we're still seeing it very clear. The famous band The Beatles and their song Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds was all to honor this specific alignment, where we can find Venus along her transit in the constellation of Cancer twice in an 8-year time frame. In what we commonly call the summer solstice of 2027, we find the planet Venus this time right at the cross of the north-south meridian line and the arc of the ecliptic. And when we go forward to what we commonly call summer solstice of 2028, we find Venus back in the bullseye area of the constellation of Taurus, where the same pattern over 8 years you will find Venus repeat over and over again. All right, so let's take what we've just seen in the transit of Venus over 8 years and really get at correctly decoding exactly what this famously satanic symbol of the inverted pentagram is really all about. In order to best do this, we're going to take what we've been looking at with Venus's 8-year transit. Remember, we flipped these images right side up when we started so that we could take a look at it better. But for seeing how to pull it all together, we're going to look at it from our original perspective, where we started. In that hellish realm, remember, from our perspective, it's an inverted realm, or is upside down. So that's what you're looking at here. The realm of the underworld, or hell, from the northern hemisphere viewer's perspective at midnight on the summer solstice, and the numbers that are being laid out are all the constellations we found the planet Venus in, as we took a look at, in order over her 8-year transit, and watch what happens when we connect all those dots. all occurring right above the head of Orion in the sky story, and watch what shape connecting those dots makes. As you can see, it's the 8-year, devilishly tricky transit of Venus that forms the inverted pentagram. When you're looking down into the hellish realm, where the lake of fire is at midnight on the summer solstice in the northern hemisphere. Exactly where the devil card of the tarot directs our attention to properly decoding. This ancient knowledge continues to blow so many prevalent deceptions completely apart. Like, for instance, the given heliocentric model of the universe we've all been taught wrongly about, and more importantly, who made it this way to begin with. I'm sure that we're going to be dealing much more in the future with the devil in our decodings, but for now, I think that this is a good place to end this one, and we'll pick it back up in our next decoding. Until then, be well.